Namaskaram. I've already got 12 questions, so I don't know whether I'll be able to, how many I'll be able to get through today, but I will start with the questions that are directly related to the practice of self-investigation. The first question is, Sushil Motwani asks, during self-inquiry, is it right to keep repeating I as a kind of japa? Or should it be who am I or whence am I? To answer the first part of the question, Bhagavan has suggested that as an aid to self-investigation, to repeat the word I. This is particularly useful at the early stages when we are less familiar with the practice. That is, the practice of self-investigation is just being self-attentive. In other words, attending to nothing other than ourselves. But because we are used to attending to objects, and ourself is not an object, we are a subject. So we are shifting our attention away from all objects back towards the subject. The subject obviously is much more subtle than objects. So because we are used to attending to objects, for many people, it's difficult to, for many people it seems difficult to grasp at first what is meant by being self-attentive. So to help people become familiar with self-attentiveness, Bhagavan suggested repeating the word I. One place where he suggests this is in the 5th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār. What he says in the earlier sentences of this paragraph are, whatever it is that rises in this body as I, that alone is the mind. Why he says it rises in the body as I is whenever we rise as ego, we always experience ourselves as if we were a body. So since we experience this body as I, we feel ourselves to be confined within the limits of this body. So we are inside this body, not outside. We're something in the body, not outside. So that's why Bhagavan says, whatever it is that rises in this body as I, that alone is the mind. That means that I that rises and identifies itself with this body, that is mind. And then in the next sentence he says, if one investigates in what place the thought called I appears in the body, one will come to know that it is in the heart. This sentence is often misunderstood by people because Bhagavan says, in what place the thought called I first appears in the body. People take it to mean we're looking for a place in the body. That is not the idea. The I rises in the body. From where does it rise? The body appears only after I rises. As Bhagavan says later in the same paragraph, he says, only after the first thought called I rises do other thoughts rise. The body is just a thought. So the body appears only after we rise as I. So that is why he has said that the I rises in the body. Is as soon as I rises, as soon as we rise as ego, we project the body and feel ourselves to be confined within that body. So we are not looking for a place in the body. Bhagavan often uses the word place in a metaphorical sense. So when he says in what place the thought called I rises, he's not talking about a place in time and space. He's talking, it's a metaphor for the source, or from what did this thought called I rise? The thought called I is ego. And from where do we rise as ego? Only from ourselves, because prior to the rising of ego, nothing other than ourselves, nothing other than our real nature exists. So when he asks us to investigate in what place the thought called I first appears in the body, he's asking us to investigate ourselves, who are that from which we rise as ego. That is, in sleep, we alone exist. Nothing other than ourself exists. in waking and dream, we rise as ego. So from where do we rise? There's nothing other than ourselves from which we could rise. So the place from which we rise is our real nature, Swarupa. So what he means here when he says, if one investigates in what place the thought called I first appears in the body, he means if we investigate our real nature. In other words, if we investigate that fundamental awareness I am, which is the source from which we rise as ego, I am this or I am that, one will come to know that it is in the heart. Here, when Bhagavan uses the term heart, he's not talking about a place in the body. Heart means the center. The center means what we actually are. That is, I am is the heart. There is no heart other than I am. For people with strongly outward going minds who are not able to understand subtleties, when such people ask him where in the body is heart, as a concession to their limited understanding and their outward-looking view, Bhagavan said, in relation to the body, heart is 2 digits to the right from the center of the chest. That is, when we refer to ourselves, we point, where do we point? We don't point at our head or at our feet, we point at our chest, because that is the point in the body that we feel to be the center of ourselves. But that is obviously only in relation to the body. That is not what Bhagavan is talking about here. When he talks about heart here, and in most places, he means the source, the center of everything, which is the source from which we arose. And that is clear from the next sentence, in which he says, that alone is the birthplace of the mind. The birthplace, again, that's an idiomatic way of saying the source. So from where did this mind rise? Only from ourselves, from this very core of ourselves, from what we actually are. That is from I am. What he's recommended, what he's talking about in these first 3 sentences, investigating ourselves and investigating I am. That's the implication. Then in the 4th sentence, he says, even if one continues thinking I, it will take and leave one in that place. Again, place here doesn't mean a place in time and space. It means heart, the center of ourselves. So what he is suggesting here, and he says, even if, so this isn't the main practice, but this is an aid to the practice. Even if one continues thinking I, that is what he says in Tamil is, Nāṉ Ār Karati Kondirindalum Kuda. Kuda means even if one goes on thinking. So this is a concession to people who aren't able to grasp what is meant by being self-attentive, investigating the core of ourselves, the heart of ourselves. He said, even if one goes on thinking I, it will take and leave one in that place. Why he recommends this? When we mention any word, every word refers to something. If, for example, I say mango, it refers to a certain object. So when I say mango, what does the word mango, what does it bring to your mind? It brings the thought of a mango to your mind. If I say running, it brings running is an action. It brings that action to your mind. So every word refers to something. So when we think I, we shouldn't exactly do it like japa, because japa is just a mere repetition. But this we are not. It's not. The idea isn't to repeat I continuously. The idea is to think in our mind, think the word I, and try and see what this word is referring to. Just like the word mango refers to a certain type of fruit, the word I refers to something within us. That is that fundamental awareness of our own existence. That's what the word I refers to. In other words, I is the pronoun that refers to ourselves. So to draw our attention to ourselves, Bhagavan suggested that we can think I. It's not necessary to continue doing it as a japa, even just a few times, slowly and contemplatively, trying to see or trying to be aware of that which is denoted by the word I, namely ourselves. So this is an aid to bring our attention to ourselves. But the actual practice of self-investigation is not merely repeating the word I, it is attending to ourselves, being self-attentive. And though repeating the word I a few times may be helpful at first, it can't take us very deep, because so long as even the slightest attention is even to the slightest extent on anything other than ourselves, we're not going very deep within. So though the word I refers to ourselves, it's still a word, it's a thought. So it's something other than ourselves. The word is something other than ourselves. What it refers to is ourselves. That is why in verse 29 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, Bhagavan begins by saying, Nāṇ Ār, without saying I by mouth. By mouth here implies both the physical mouth and mentally. It implies it's a metaphorical way of saying mentally, because just like we've got a bodily mouth, we've got a mental mouth. That is, we often think in words. So that we are, so to speak, the mind is talking. So that's the mental mouth. So not saying I by mouth doesn't mean we shouldn't just physically say I. We shouldn't be. Our attention should not be on the mere word I. What we need to investigate, he explains very nicely, Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, by the inward sinking mind, Nāṉ Ār Undum. Where does this I rise? Investigating where this I rises. He's not saying ask where this I rises. Investigating where this I rises, that alone is jnana neri, the path of jnana. Except this, thinking I'm not this, I am that, is an aid, but is it vichara? No, the implication is it's not vichara. Vichara means attending only to ourselves, not even thinking I, let alone thinking I'm not this or I'm not that. We're not to think anything. We are to attend only to ourselves. That is, so as I say, this repeating the word I a few times can be a help to draw our attention to ourselves, but we shouldn't continue for a long period doing it like a japa, or it becomes mechanical. We repeat the word I only to draw our attention back to ourselves, because self-inquiry or self-investigation, Atma-vichara, is nothing but attending to ourselves. This repeating the word I is only an aid to draw our attention back to ourselves. So that's the first part of the question, whether we should keep repeating I. Yes, we can repeat I a few times, but we shouldn't keep on doing it for a long time. That'll be missing the point. And then the next part of the question is, or should it be who am I or whence am I? Bhagavan never asked us to ask the questions, who am I or whence am I? In some books, it is recorded as if he said ask, but actually what Bhagavan said in Tamil is, for example, in Nāṉ Ār, he doesn't say ask who am I, he says investigate. He uses the verb vichari, which means to investigate. So we have to investigate what we are, or whence am I means from where we are. From where do we rise? As I said, ego is the false awareness, I am this body. From where does that false awareness rise? Only from the real awareness, I am. So though Bhagavan expressed his teachings in terms of these questions, it's not actually meant as a question. It's meant as what we should be investigating. We should be investigating who we are or from where we arise. So these terms, who am I and whence am I, these are pointers. Bhagavan is pointing our attention back at ourselves. So what we are to attend to is only ourselves. In English, when we say, when we ask the question, who am I, we usually put the interrogative pronoun first, who first, and the I last. In Tamil, it generally says the other way around. Nāṉ Ār, I am who. So that is, it's giving Bhagavan's focus, is what Bhagavan wants us to focus on is I. Likewise with whence am I? In Tamil, that would be Nāṉ Ār. I am from where? So it's the I that is what we need to attend to, not to the word I, but to that which the word I refers to, in other words, ourselves. So our aim when we're investigating ourselves is just to be self-attentive. This leads on to the next question asked by Anita Katru. How do we concentrate on self? And how to control drafts of mind? Asking how do we concentrate on, or more than concentrate, I think a more appropriate term is attend to, but it's more or less it means the same thing. How do we attend to ourselves? That asking that question is like asking, how do I look at the computer screen? You look at the computer screen by looking at the computer screen. That is, well, when we say look at the computer screen, those words are self-explanatory. There's no further explanation is needed. Likewise, when it is said, attend to yourself, or investigate yourself, or observe yourself, or see yourself, or concentrate on yourself, that simply means our attention has to be turned away from all other things and focused only on ourselves. So the reason people ask questions like, nobody would ask, how do I look at the computer screen? Because we know why people ask questions like, how do I attend to myself, or how do I concentrate on myself, is because, as I said earlier, we are used to attending to objects, things other than ourselves. All objects are vāsanās. Vāsanās means they've got distinguishing features. So we can distinguish one object from another. We can distinguish, for example, a computer from the table on which it's sitting, because we know these features. When we see these features, this is a computer. When we see other features, something with 4 legs and made of wood, that's a table. So we distinguish one object from another by its features. And this applies not only to physical objects, also to mental objects. So many thoughts and feelings and emotions and so on are going through our mind. We are able to distinguish one from another because of its distinguishing features. So every object, every phenomenon is vāsanās, that it has distinguishing features. Whereas the subject is, as Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, the subject means ego, the one, that which is aware of all other things. Ego, Bhagavan describes as a formless phantom. Being a formless phantom, formless means it has no distinguishing features. But so we are not looking for an object, we're not looking for something, we are looking for that which is aware of all things. That is ourself. Though we have no distinguishing features, we are clearly aware of ourselves, because in order to be aware of anything else, who is aware of it? I am. So all phenomena, all objects appear only to a subject. So as the subject, as ego, we are aware both of ourselves and of other things. So though we are not an object, we are clearly aware of ourselves. There is never a moment when we are not aware of ourselves. That is why we keep on referring to ourselves as I. Now because of our fundamental awareness, I am, is mixed and conflated with adjuncts, we mistake ourselves to be this body. So we refer to this body as I am sitting. And we refer to mind also as I am thinking. But underlying that our awareness of this body and our awareness of this mind is a deeper awareness of our mere existence, I am. Whether this body and mind appear or don't appear, we're always aware I am. Even in sleep, though we're not aware of anything else in sleep, but we are aware of our mere existence there. When we wake up, we know I slept very happily. How are we able to know that we slept happily? And we're also able to know something about sleep. Not much, but we can at least say, I wasn't aware of anything. I didn't have any dreams. So even that negative description, we're able to describe sleep as a state devoid of awareness of anything else because we were aware in sleep. So in sleep, we're aware only of our own existence. In waking and dream, we're aware of ourselves, our own existence, and we're aware of other things. So now we need to withdraw our attention from all other things and fix it only on ourselves, on that which is denoted by the word I. What the word I actually refers to is just that awareness of our own existence. That is what we are to attend to. It is not an object, it's something much subtler than an object, but it's something of which we are clearly aware. Because we are clearly aware of it, we can attend to it or concentrate on it. But it is not, though we use terms like attend to and concentrate on, these are words that are designed to talk about attending to objects, concentrating on objects. This is a far subtler kind of attention. It's not like attending to an object. It is just being attentively aware of ourselves. That is, at every moment, we are always aware, I am. We're always aware of our own existence. But because of our interest in other things, we take our own existence for granted. Yes, we know I am, but there's nothing interesting about I am. So or it seems to us that there's nothing interesting about I am. So our attention is always going outwards to other things. So though we're always aware of ourselves, we are negligently aware of ourselves. Now we need to understand, after coming to Bhagavan and studying Bhagavan's teaching, we now come to understand, this I am, which I thought was something very uninteresting, this is actually the most interesting thing of all. What am I? Who am I? So we become interested in trying to investigate what we ourselves actually are. And we can investigate what we are only by being self-attentive, only by keenly attending to ourselves or looking at ourselves. Now, obviously, we're not looking with our eyes, but it's a metaphorical way of saying it. We are trying to focus our entire mind only on ourselves, on that to which all other things appear. That's why Bhagavan often gave a pointer in the form of he often said, investigate to whom it appears. That is whatever appears, any thought or phenomena, whatever it may be, to whom does it appear? It appears only to me. That will bring our attention back to ourselves. So the only way to learn how to concentrate on ourselves, how to be self-attentive, is to try. Just like if you ask how to ride a bicycle, some basic pointers can be given, but the only way to actually learn to ride a bicycle is to get onto a bicycle and wobble and fall off and get up again and try again. And sooner or later, we get the hang of it. It's only by trial and error that we learn how to balance on a bicycle. Likewise, it's by trial and error that we learn to become familiar with this, with what is meant by the term self-attentiveness. yes, practice is what is most important. The more we practice it, the clearer it becomes. What is meant by the term self-attentiveness or self-investigation becomes clear to the extent to which we try to attend to ourselves. Sometimes people used to ask Bhagavan, how do I practice this self-investigation? How do I investigate myself? Or how do I attend to myself? Bhagavan said, if the way were objective, it could be explained objectively. But this is not objective. So it cannot be explained objectively. But do you need to know to be shown the way inside your own home? We each have to find our own way into our own home. Our own home here means our own heart. We have to investigate and find the way inside. It becomes clear to the extent that Bhagavan has given us many very nice pointers. If we think deeply about in fact, all his teachings are pointing only at this. So if we think deeply about his teachings and try to apply in practice, it will become clear to us. That's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is how to control drafts of mind. I'm not absolutely sure what is meant here by drafts of the mind, but I assume it means the outward going flow of the mind. Our real nature is to be as we actually are. But when we rise as ego or mind, we assume a nature that is contrary to our own nature. That is the nature of going outwards. The very nature of ego or mind is to be always grasping things other than itself. As Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, ego is a formless phantom. That it's got no form of its own, so it's formless, and it's a phantom because it's got no substance of its own. It borrows its substance from Satchit, so it's aware of itself as I am. That is, the ego seems to exist and seems to be aware, but it's borrowed that existence and awareness from Satchit, from our fundamental awareness I am. It also seems to be a form, because it borrows the form of a body as itself. So, but ego itself is a formless phantom. So how does this formless phantom seem to exist? He explains in the earlier part of this verse, grasping form, it comes into existence. Grasping form, it stands. Grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. Leaving form, it grasps form. So the very nature of ego is always to be grasping form. Since ego is formless, all forms are things other than itself. So what Bhagavan implies there, as soon as we rise as ego, our nature as ego is to be always grasping things other than ourselves. So the mind has the mind or ego has a very strong inclination to go outwards to grasp other things. If we don't grasp other things, ego cannot stand without grasping things other than itself. So for its very survival, it continues trying to grasp other things. So we have very strong inclinations to grasp things other than ourselves. Those inclinations to grasp things other than ourselves are what are called vāsanās. Vishaya means object or phenomena. So it's what Bhagavan refers to in that verse as form. That all forms are vishayas and all vishayas are forms of one kind or another. They're all things that have distinguishing features. So vishayas are objects or phenomena. Vasana means an inclination. We are inclined to attend to things other than ourselves. We're inclined to experience and enjoy things other than ourselves. That is the general inclination of the mind. So I think that's maybe what is meant here by drafts of the mind. That we have strong inclination to go outwards. How to control that? That is, as Bhagavan says in the 9th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, the 10th paragraph, these Vishaya Vasanas, he says, Tondru Totu Varu Kendra. They come from time immemorial. That is from the very beginning of time. That is, as soon as we rise as ego, we have this inclination to go outwards. So it is the nature of ego to have Vishaya Vasanas. And the more we allow ourselves to be swayed by our Vishaya vasanas, the stronger they become. So now we have been cultivating these Vishaya vasanas since we first rose as ego, whenever that was. So through crores of Janmas, through hundreds of millions of lives, we have been allowing ourselves to be swayed by our Vishaya vasanas, to attend to one thing or another, and to experience it, and to act accordingly. So this is, now we need to change this outward-going nature of ego to our real nature, which is just not going outwards, but just being as we are. So we change this direction of our mind by practice, by persistent practice of self-attentiveness. That is, at every moment we have a choice. That is, our Vishaya vasanas are always tending to draw our mind outwards. But we have a choice. Do we allow ourselves to be swayed by these inclinations, these vasanas, or do we cling firmly to self-attentiveness? If we hold on to I am, we are thereby not allowing ourselves to be swayed by our Vishaya vasanas. And by holding on to I am, we are cultivating and strengthening what Bhagavan often referred to as Sat vasana. That Sat means being or existence. So the inclination or the love just to know and to be what we actually are, that is what is called Sat vasana. That is also what is alternatively called Swatma Bhakti, love for our own real nature, love for our own self. So by the more we try to be self-attentive, the more we are thereby strengthening our Satvasana and weakening our Vishaya vasanas. So it's not so much a matter of controlling the Vishaya vasanas, it's a matter of not allowing ourselves to be controlled by them. That is, when we allow ourselves to be swayed by our Vishaya vasanas, they never actually have control over us. It's because we yield ourselves to them that they seem to have control over us. But the vasanas seem to be very strong. But from where do they derive their strength? They don't derive their strength from anything outside ourselves. They derive their strength only from us. Because whose inclinations are they? It's our inclinations, our liking, our taste to go outwards. So we can avoid being, we can weaken those outward going inclinations by clinging firmly to self-attentiveness and thereby not allowing ourselves to be swayed by them. To the extent that we allow ourselves to be swayed by them, to that extent we continue to nourish and sustain them. So the only, we can weaken Vishaya vasanas by other means, by bhakti and so on, but these are roundabout ways. The most direct way is the simple path of self-investigation and self-surrender that Bhagavan has taught us. In other words, just clinging to I am. The more we cling to I am, the more we're strengthening our Satvasana and weakening our Vishaya vasana. In other words, we're cultivating bhakti, which is the Satvasana, and we're also cultivating vairagya, which is the vairagya is the freedom from the inclination to go outward, the freedom from desire, the freedom from the Vishaya vasanas. So to the extent to which we weaken the Vishaya vasanas by holding on to I am, we are cultivating both bhakti and vairagya. And bhakti and vairagya are essential, because without bhakti and vairagya, we will never surrender ourselves. Because in order to surrender ourselves, we need to let go of everything, including this, everything that we take ourselves to be, everything other than I am, we need to let go of. So we will be willing to do that only to the extent that we have love to turn within and freedom from any desire to go outwards. The next question is asked by Narasingha Maruvada. What he asks is it true that the questions arise due to Vishaya vasanas? If someone is doing Atma-vichara, the questions cease to arise. Is it? Yes, all questions arise due to Vishaya vasanas. All, that is, all phenomena, that questions are thoughts, and all thoughts, not only all thoughts, but all phenomena. That's what Bhagavan used the term thought in a very broad sense. According to Bhagavan, this whole world is nothing but thoughts, because it's only our own mental impression. There's no world existing out there. Just like in dream, we see a world, but that world doesn't exist apart from our perception of it. Likewise, this world doesn't exist apart from our perception of it. So this world is nothing but an impression we create in our own mind. It doesn't actually exist out there. So according to Bhagavan, everything is just thoughts, and all thoughts, the seeds that sprout as thoughts, are our Vishaya vasanas. So sometimes Bhagavan compared Vishaya vasanas to the films, to the images on the film reel. Those images on the film reel are projected on the screen. Everything that is seen on the screen is nothing but a projection of those small images on that celluloid film reel. Likewise, all phenomena, all thoughts are nothing but a projection of our Vishaya vasanas. In other words, all Vishayas, all objects or phenomena are a projection of Vishaya vasanas. Why do all these things appear? Because we're inclined to attend to them. That we have that vasana to experience these things, so they appear. Because they're our own mental creation. So just like everything else, yes, questions arise due to Vishaya vasanas. But there are certain questions that arise not due to Vishaya vasanas, but due to Sat vasana. Questions such as, who am I? What is real? From where do I rise? These questions are, why these questions arise in our mind? Because we are slowly losing interest in the Vishayas and taking interest in Sat, in what actually exists. What actually exists is only ourself, I am. But insofar as even the thought, who am I, or whence am I, or what is real, even so far as these are thoughts, they are in that sense, that is the words are a projection of our Vishaya vasanas, but the interest that underlies asking such questions is the Sat vasana. And then the next question, that was the first half of Narasingha's question. The second part was, if someone is doing Atma-vichara, the questions cease to arise, is it? Yes. If, to the extent that we are attending to ourselves, we are thereby not giving room to rising of any other thoughts. So since questions are all thoughts, to the extent to which we are attending to ourselves, we are not giving room to the rising of thoughts. That is, all thoughts, including questions, arise only to the extent to which we attend to them. That is, the inclination to think those thoughts may be rising, but only if we allow ourselves to be swayed by those inclinations. In other words, those vasanas, does it actually take the form of a thought? Once it takes the form of a thought, that means we let go of self-attentiveness. So we need to return our attention back to ourselves. So to the extent to which we are attending to ourselves, to that extent we are not attending to other things. To the extent to which we're not attending to other things, there's no scope for questions to arise. But in practice, when we are trying to be self-attentive, until the last moment, until we are willing to surrender ourselves completely, we don't turn a full 180 degrees to attend to ourselves. We attend to ourselves partially while still holding on to at least a lingering awareness of other things. So even during that state of partial self-attentiveness, questions may still arise to some extent, but to the extent to which we are self-attentive, to that extent they will not arise. The next question is asked by Krishna. As we turn our attention within, can we imagine Ramana's beautiful smiling face in our heart, in order to feel love towards the self. We need to understand what Bhagavan means by within, when he talks about turning within. All phenomena, all thoughts, everything other than I is external to us. So even the form of Bhagavan is something external to us. So even if we have a mental image of Bhagavan's smiling face, our attention isn't turned within, it's still turned outwards towards something other than ourselves. So remembering Bhagavan's smiling face should prompt us to turn our attention within, to attend to ourselves, because when we see Bhagavan's face, we see his eyes. What is Bhagavan's face telling us? It is telling us, see yourself. Because what is it that has appeared in the form of Bhagavan? It is only our own real nature. Because we are suffering in this world in this samsara by attending to things other than ourselves, it's necessary for our own self to appear outwardly in the form of Bhagavan in order to tell us to turn within. So when we look at Bhagavan's face, we cannot but be reminded of what Bhagavan, for 54 years, Bhagavan was teaching one thing and one thing alone: see yourself, attend to yourself. So as soon as we, in our mind's eye, we have a mental image of Bhagavan's smiling face, his smiling face should remind us to turn our attention back towards ourselves. The more we love Bhagavan, the more we will love to put his teachings into practice. So Guru Bhakti, the love for the outward form of a Guru, enkindles Swatma Bhakti, love towards ourselves. So by all means, remember Bhagavan's teachings. Remember Bhagavan's teachings, obviously, but remember his beautiful smiling face before, when we start to practice, but that his beautiful smiling face should remind us to turn back within. To whom did this beautiful smiling face appear? To me. Who am I? That is the direction in which Bhagavan isn't asking us to ask those questions. Those questions are pointing out to us the direction in which our attention should turn, away from all phenomena, even from the smiling face of Bhagavan, back towards the one to whom all these appear. So Bhagavan's face has that power to turn our attention back to ourselves. So we should yield to that. We should yield to that power that his face has to turn our attention back to ourselves. That is, when we look at Bhagavan's eyes, what are they saying to us? They are saying, see yourself. I am that which is shiny in you as I. So I hope that answers that question adequately. The next question is asked by Jamana. Is the great ecstasy given by the love for Bhagavan purifying? Or should we ask to whom it is happening in order to go back to our Atma-vichara? Love for Bhagavan is certainly purifying. That love may create ecstasy, but we shouldn't be content with any ecstasy other than that infinite happiness that we really are. So any ecstasy that is, so long as that ecstasy is something that comes and goes, appears and disappears, that is something other than ourselves. That the happiness we experience in that state of ecstasy is coming only from within. But so long as we experience something appearing and disappearing, we are not experiencing ourselves as we actually are. So if we experience a great ecstasy, yes, we should investigate to whom it appears and turn our attention. We need to go deeper and deeper and deeper within. That is, however deep we go, until we lose ourselves completely, we need to go on going deeper and deeper. So we need to persevere in this practice of self-investigation. Otherwise, if we have ecstatic experiences, it's very attractive. But that's a subtle type of Vishaya. It's something other than ourself. It's got some distinguishing features. So it is not ourself. What we actually are is nirvisesha. It is devoid of any distinguishing features. So states of ecstasy, it's a state of with distinguishing features. That state of ecstasy is different, is distinguished from the normal state of our mind. So it's another state of mind. So we shouldn't be dwelling on that. We should go deeper and deeper and deeper within until we lose ourselves in that infinite ocean of happiness that we really are. So we shouldn't allow ourselves to be distracted by any experiences that may occur along the way. Bhagavan says, even seeing God, supposing God appears before us, or Bhagavan appears before us, even that, Bhagavan said, is seeing only a mental image. That is what he says in the first sentence of verse 20 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, Karnam tanne vittu, leaving oneself who sees, tan kadvale karnal, karnam manomayamakam kakshi. That is, leaving oneself. That means instead of seeing oneself, seeing God is seeing only a mental image. So the real Ramana Darshanam is only Swarupa Darshanam. If we really want to see Bhagavan, we need to turn within, to see him shining within as I am, not as a name and form, but as that fundamental awareness I am. That is the true form of Bhagavan. That's what Bhagavan sang in that when he was asked who he is. He sang, Ariyati tara jivara dahavari jaguhayil, Arivai Rami Paramatmana Aruṇācala Ramanam. Aruṇācala Ramana is that supreme, that Paramatma, that supreme self that is always existing blissfully, Rami, existing blissfully, Arivai, as awareness, in the cave of in the cave of the heart lotus of all living beings, of all the diverse living beings, beginning with Hari. So Bhagavan is that which is always shining in our heart as I. So if we truly love Bhagavan, we should try to turn our attention more and more within. We shouldn't allow ourselves to be distracted by any feelings of ecstasy that may arise. Whatever arises, it's arisen and it's going to subside. We are looking for that. What we are investigating, when we're practicing self-investigation, we are trying to hold on to that which never appears or disappears. In other words, that fundamental awareness I am, that alone is real. Anything that appears or disappears is not real. It cannot be real because, as Bhagavan said, what exists at one time and not at another time doesn't actually exist, even when it seems to exist. So even the great ecstasy, great states of ecstasy we may experience, it is not real. What is real is only I am. So we should, when any experience appears, to whom does it appear? To me. We should turn our attention back to ourselves. But that question, the wording of that question was, is the great ecstasy given by the love for Bhagavan purifying? The love for Bhagavan is certainly purifying. The ecstasy, if it kindles more love, yes, to that extent it can contribute to a purification of the mind, but we shouldn't dwell on that ecstasy. We should turn our attention back to ourselves, the one to whom the ecstasy has arisen. So those were the 5 questions I was asked on Atma-vichara. The next question is one on surrender. Harish Subramaniam asked, surrendering our will to Bhagavan's sounds difficult. How do we do it, especially when in the grip of strong emotions? Whether surrender is difficult or easy, all depends on our willingness to surrender. If we are willing to surrender ourselves completely to him, there is nothing easier than surrendering, because we just let go of everything else and hold on only to I am. That is surrendering to him. There is nothing easier than that. It seems difficult to the extent that we are unwilling to do so. So the key to surrender is bhakti, love or the willingness to let go of everything and to hold only on to I am. Holding on to I am is the true bhakti, as Bhagavan often pointed out. So we will be willing to, we will find surrender easy to the extent to which we are willing to let go. Regarding the question, how do we do it? As I say, the key to surrender is bhakti, is the love to do it. We must be at the early stages of surrender. What is the first obstacle between us and Bhagavan? We want to surrender ourselves to Bhagavan, but it seems difficult to do so. Why does it seem difficult to do so? Because though we have a liking to surrender, we still have so much liking for other things. So we are not yet willing to let go. So our will, that is our vishaya vāsanās, our liking to go outwards, that is what stands between us and surrendering ourselves to Bhagavan. So we first have to surrender our will to his will. In Āruṇācala Padigam, verse 2, Bhagavan says, Ninishtam enishtam, your will is my will. Imbadaku, that is happiness for me. That is a very, very powerful clue Bhagavan gives us. That is, whatever happens is according to his will. That is, though we say, though we call everything that we experience in this life, we say it is prarabdha, we need to understand what prarabdha is. Yes, prarabdha is the fruit of our past actions, but it is not just a random collection of fruit of past actions. But prarabdha is selected by Bhagavan in such a way that will be most conducive to our spiritual development. So whatever has been ordained in our prarabdha, though it is the fruit of our past actions, it is the fruit of our past actions selected by him. So it is his will. That is, over crores of janmas, we have accumulated an immeasurable quantity of fruits of actions. In each lifetime, we can experience only a small fraction of those fruit. So the sanchita, the store of all the fruits that we haven't yet experienced, is a huge pile. The word sanchita means a heap or a pile. So it is a vast mountain of fruit Bhagavan has available to select from. So he selects those fruit that will be most favorable to our development in this lifetime. So whatever happens in our life is his will. That is, nothing can happen without his knowledge and without his consent. It happened because he has allotted this for us to experience. So we should be willing to accept whatever happens is his will, and we shouldn't want anything more than that, because what he is, whatever we are to experience according to prarabdha, that is his will. Whatever we are not to experience, that is also his will. So if we have to surrender our will to his, that is, we have to give up all our likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and accept whatever happens. Sometimes in prarabdha, we all experience some pleasant things and some unpleasant things. Sometimes we experience very unpleasant things, but even the most unpleasant things, we need to be willing to accept as his will. And if we take it as his will, because we know he's all loving, we will take happiness, we will happily accept even the most unpleasant things, because that's his will. So this is how we surrender our will to his will. So we have to slowly wean our mind off its likes, dislikes, and so on. We cannot all of a sudden give up our likes and dislikes, but we can weaken them. The most effective way to weaken our likes, dislikes, desires, and attachment is we can weaken them only by reducing the strength of the seeds that give rise to them. The seeds that give rise to them are our Vishaya vasanas. And the most effective way to weaken the Vishaya vasanas is by the simple practice of self-attentiveness. The more we cling to self-attentiveness, the more we are thereby not allowing ourselves to be swayed by our Vishaya vasanas, so they become weaker. So that is the most effective way to surrender our will to Bhagavan. So the deeper we go in this practice of self-investigation, the easier it will be for us to surrender our will to Bhagavan. So when people ask how to surrender, that is, if we understand what surrender is, we will understand how to do it. That is, where surrender means letting go of everything, accepting everything as Bhagavan's will. And eventually, we are not only surrendering our will, we need to surrender ourselves, because so long as we remain separate, so long as we rise as ego to a greater or lesser extent, we will have Vishaya vasanas, and those Vishaya vasanas will give rise to likes, dislikes, desires, and so on. So in order to achieve vāsanakshaya, the complete destruction of all vasanas, we need to attain manonasa, destruction of the mind, the destruction of ego. Only by eradication of ego can we eradicate all vasanas, because ego is the root. So long as the root remains, if you cut down a tree and leave the root, it will again start sprouting, because the life is there in the root. That is the source of that big vast tree has grown up. It's all grown up from the root. Everything comes from the root. So this vast tree of samsara, the root of this vast tree of samsara is only this ego. So in order to free ourselves from samsara and all our likes and dislikes that come along with it, we need to eradicate the root of it, which is ego. So that is, when we rise as ego, our nature is to have Vishaya vasanas. Now, Vishaya vasanas gives rise to this vast tree of samsara and countless births and deaths and so on, which are just an endless series of dreams. So to put an end to all this, we need to cut the root. But in order to cut the root, we need to be willing to do so. So we need to be willing to surrender all our likes, dislikes, and so on, and to cultivate that love just to know and to be what we actually are. That is how we surrender. So if we're truly following either the path of self-surrender or the path of self-investigation, we will find we're actually one and the same path. Because in order to surrender our will, we need to cling to Bhagavan. What is Bhagavan? Bhagavan is that which is shining in our heart as I. Clinging to I is otherwise called self-investigation. So the practice of self-investigation and self-surrender are one and the same. As Bhagavan says in the 13th paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, he explains what it means to give ourselves to God. In other words, what is true surrender? I'll break the sentence down into I'll first deal with the main clause and then the subsidiary clause. The main clause of the sentence is Atma-vichara paranai iripade tanne isanaku alipadam. Atma-vichara paranai means being as one firmly established as oneself. That alone is giving oneself to God. So how do we remain established as ourselves? That means Atma-vichara implies being as we actually are, or remaining as Atma Swarupa. So how do we remain as we actually are? He explains that in the adverbial clause. What he says in the adverbial clause is Anma chintane tavira, vera chintane kalambavatiku satram idam kadamo. That means not giving even the slightest room to the rising of any thought other than Atma-chintana. Atma-chintana literally means thought of ourself. It implies self-attentiveness. So the implication here is we need to be so keenly self-attentive that we thereby give no room to the rising of any other thoughts. By being so keenly self-attentive and not giving rise to any other thoughts, we are thereby remaining as we actually are, and that is giving ourselves to God. So, in other words, what Bhagavan is saying in this sentence is, it is only by self-investigation that we can surrender ourselves completely. So surrender begins on the path of bhakti, when we are still taking God to be something other than ourselves, and we're trying to surrender our will to God. But as we go deeper in the path of surrender, it merges and becomes one with the path of vichara, because it's only by what is the self that we need to surrender? It is ego. Ego is nothing but a wrong awareness of ourself, and awareness of ourself is something other than what we actually are. So in order to surrender this ego, the only way is to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. That is, in order to get rid of the wrong awareness of ourselves, the awareness of ourselves is something other than what we actually are, we need to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. So it's only by vichara that surrender can become complete. But in the process, Atma-vichara and Atma-samarpanam, self-investigation and self-surrender, they are a process. During this process, we need to be slowly reducing the strength of our likes and dislikes, and we need to cultivate the willingness to accept whatever happens as Bhagavan's sweet will. This is, truly speaking, this is a very, very pleasant path Bhagavan has given us, because the more we free ourselves from our likes, dislikes, desires, and attachments, the freer and more contented we are. We are not, let anything happen, it doesn't perturb us. That's why Bhagavan used that analogy in the same 13th paragraph, in the last sentence. He uses the analogy of a passenger traveling in a train. When you're traveling in a train, if you've got some luggage, if you want, you can carry your luggage on your head. But whether you carry the luggage on your head or put it beside you, what is actually carrying the luggage is the train. So why should we suffer unnecessarily carrying the luggage on our head instead of putting it aside and traveling at ease? What Bhagavan means by that is we don't have to carry any burden on our mind. We can give up all our likes, dislikes, and everything. Leave the whole burden to him. As he says also in that sentence, however much burden we place on God, he bears all of it. So even the burden of thinking we can leave to him, and we can just be happily. Bhagavan's path is a path of happiness. The goal is happiness. And the only way if the path was something other than the goal, if it were of a different nature than the goal, it couldn't lead to it. So letting go of everything, this is Bhagavan's path. And the more we let go, the happier we are. So this is truly the path of happiness Bhagavan has given us. Once we begin to taste what a great relief it is to surrender ourselves even a little, we will be attracted to surrender ourselves more and more. So the love will grow, and the love will enable us to surrender ourselves more. So this path of self-investigation and self-surrender that Bhagavan has taught us, it is a very, very simple but also a very beautiful and blissful path. What is the true sign that we are following Bhagavan's path? The happier we are, I'm not talking about superficial happiness, not the pleasures of life. I'm not talking about the deep inner contentment and happiness. The more deeply contented we are, the more we are letting go of everything and just being happily as we are, that is the sign that we're truly following Bhagavan's path. So if we feel miserable, that means we are allowing ourselves to be dominated by our likes and dislikes, and therefore not surrendering our will to him. If we give up our likes and dislikes, we will not feel miserable. We feel perfectly content with whatever may happen. So how to surrender ourselves? Begin surrendering, and it's a snowballing process. The more we surrender, the more we will be inclined to surrender, because we will taste the joy of surrender. We taste the relief of surrender. After a hard day's work, how nice is it at night to get into bed? But now I can relax. I'm relieved of everything. I can just fall asleep, and all the worries can leave till tomorrow. What a great relief it is. Surrender is like that. The more we let go of things, the greater the relief. So this is truly a very, very pleasant path Bhagavan has shown us. The next question, the next two questions are related to karma. Again, Harish Subramaniam asks, if a person is hungry and I give him food, is it my karma when I give him food, or is it my destiny? I think what he means here by is it my karma, is it agamya or is it prarabdha? I think that's a question. If everything we are to experience is ordained, is it not destiny to give the other person food? How is it my new karma? Then when is new karma created? That is, there are three instruments for action, that mind, speech, and body. These three, by whatever actions are done by any of these three instruments, we experience as actions done by us. That is, the doership arises because of our identification. So because we experience this body, mind, and so on as ourself, whatever actions are done by mind, speech, or body, we experience as actions done by us. But there are two forces driving the actions we do by body, speech, or mind. That is, prarabdha, our destiny, is the fruit of actions that we've done in the past. Fruit means they have consequences. Prarabdha is concerned with experience. That is, what we are to experience, that is what is preordained. So whatever we are to experience in this life is preordained. That is prarabdha. And in order for us to experience whatever we are destined to experience, certain actions by mind, speech, and body are necessary. So those actions that are necessary in order for us to experience whatever we are destined to experience, those actions we will be made to do. Who will make us do those actions? God. This is what Bhagavan implies in the first sentence of the note he wrote for his mother. Avarava prarabdha prakaram adakanavan angangirindu atuvipan. Avarava prarabdha prakaram literally means in accordance with their prarabdha. That means in accordance with the prarabdha of each person, adakanavan means he who is for that. That is referring to God or Guru, the one who ordains the fruit of action, the one who is allotted for prarabdha, and the one who is also responsible for making us act in such a way that we experience it. So he who is for that, adakanavan, angangirindu, being there. That means being in each place. That implies being in the heart of each one of us. Atuvipan, will make us dance. In other words, he will make us act. So whatever actions of body, speech, and mind are necessary in order for us to experience our prarabdha, Bhagavan will make us do. But that doesn't mean that all the actions we do by body, speech, and mind are driven only by Bhagavan. Because so long as we allow our attention to move away from ourselves, we are acting under the sway of our vāsanās. So long as we are acting under the sway of our vāsanās, that gives rise to thoughts in the mind. Thoughts lead to words and action. So our body, speech, and mind are being driven both by Bhagavan in order to ensure that we do whatever is necessary in order for us to experience by our prarabdha. It's also being driven by our vāsanās, in other words, by our own will. Those, to the extent that any action is driven by our will, that action is agamya. Often, the things that we are destined to experience happen to be the things that we want to experience. That is, many of the things we experience in life are things we like, things we want. So the actions we do to experience those things are driven not only by prarabdha. Well, it's not prarabdha, it's by Bhagavan. He's driving the actions in accordance with our prarabdha, so that we experience our prarabdha. So those actions are driven not only by him, but also by our will, because we want to experience that. So to take the example, you see a hungry person by the side of a road, and you give him food. we can say, yes, that was quite probably in accordance with your prarabdha, that you were to give that food to that person at that time, and you were to experience the satisfaction of giving. But that's not the only reason why you gave. Why? You see a person hungry, and it pains you to see someone hungry. I mean, it's not nice to see another person suffering. So when we see suffering, we want to alleviate the suffering. We have a liking to alleviate the suffering because it's unpleasant for us to see suffering. So that action of giving him food may well have been driven by Bhagavan in accordance with prarabdha, but it was also driven by your own will. So our will and Bhagavan's will, both of these forces are driving our actions, and we cannot distinguish to what extent any particular action is driven by him and to what extent it's driven by our vāsanās, by our will. So, but one thing we can be sure of, that is, whatever, we need not be concerned about prarabdha, because prarabdha has been preordained. So whatever we are to experience, we're going to experience it whether we want to or not. That's what Bhagavan says. Endrum naduvad, in the same note, the following sentences of that note that Bhagavan wrote for his mother, in the next sentence he says, Endrum naduvadadu, envichikanum naduvadu. What is never to happen will not happen, however much effort is made. The fact that he says however much effort is made means we are free to try to experience things that we're not destined to experience. But however much we try, we're not going to experience them. And in the next sentence, he says, "Nadapadu entadesayenum niladu." What will happen will not stop, however much obstacle. So if we are destined to experience something, we can want to not experience it. We can try to not experience it. But however much we try to avoid that, it will happen. We cannot avoid it. So, and then he says in the next sentence, "Iduve tinnam." This is certain. Ahalin monamayira kenandu. Therefore, being silent is good. What does being silent mean? It doesn't mean just not acting, because the actions that we are destined to do, the actions that are necessary for us to do in accordance with our prarabdha will be made to do. So being silent means not allowing ourselves to be swayed by our vishaya vāsanās, because this is the point I was making. Whatever we are destined to experience, we will experience. Whatever we are not destined to experience, we will not experience. We cannot change that at all. So we need not be concerned about that, because it's already predetermined. There's nothing we can do about it. We also cannot do anything to avoid doing those actions that Bhagavan is going to make us do in accordance with our destiny. So we need not be concerned about those actions. Regarding agamya, how can we then avoid doing agamya when we cannot tell which action is agamya, which action is prarabdha, or to what extent any action is? One thing we can be sure, to the extent that we allow ourselves to be swayed by any vishaya vāsanās, we are thereby doing agamya. So the only way to avoid doing agamya is to cling so firmly to self-attentiveness that we don't allow ourselves to be swayed by any vishaya vāsana whatsoever. But most of the time, because our vishaya vāsanās are strong and our love to attend to ourselves is still relatively weak, most of the time we are attending to things other than ourselves. Whenever we attend to anything other than ourselves, we do so under the sway of our vāsanās. So those vāsanās give rise to thoughts, and the thoughts give rise to speech and actions of body. So agamya is inevitable, so long as we allow ourselves to be swayed by our vishaya vāsanās. The only way to avoid being swayed by our vishaya vāsanās is to cling to self-attentiveness. So we need not concern ourselves about whether a particular action, to what extent it is driven by our vāsanās, to what extent it's driven by God. Quite probably it's driven by both. But we can take as default the vast majority of our actions are at least to a greater or lesser extent, driven by our vāsanās, so long as we're allowing our attention away from ourselves. So what must we do? We must persevere in this practice of self-attentiveness, trying to attend to ourselves as much as possible and not concerning ourselves about action. That is, Bhagavan taught us the law of karma in order to make us understand we need not be concerned about this. What we need to be concerned about is surrendering ourselves. In order to surrender ourselves, we need to avoid being swayed by our Vishaya vāsanās. In order to avoid being swayed by our Vishaya vāsanās, we need to cling firmly to self-attentiveness. So Bhagavan has made things so simple for us. We don't have to be concerned about what is prarabdha, what is agamya. It's useful to understand the principle. Because if we understand the principle, we will understand we cannot do anything about prarabdha. It's already decided, so it need not concern us. What is the point of being concerned about what's already predetermined? So our outward life, we can completely leave it in Bhagavan's hand, because whatever is going to happen, whether we're going to get a job, whether we're going to get a pay rise, whether our daughter's going to get married, or whether we're going to get to pass our exams, or this or that, all this is already predetermined. So we can leave it, all care and concern about these things, we leave in Bhagavan's hand. That's a huge burden of our mind. All Bhagavan has asked us to do is to hold on to self-attentiveness. To the extent we hold on to self-attentiveness, we are thereby not allowing ourselves to be swayed by our Vishaya vāsanās, and thereby we are reducing the extent to which we do agamya. That is, we do agamya to the extent we are swayed by our Vishaya vāsanās. To the extent we hold on to I am, we are thereby not allowing ourselves to be swayed by our Vishaya vāsanās, and therefore not doing agamya. It's as simple as that. So let us not worry about trying to break our head, trying to work out which action is prarabdha, which is agamya, and to what extent. Prarabdha means what we are to experience. What we need to do in order to experience it will be made to do. Agamya means those actions that we do under the sway of our vāsanās. How to avoid doing agamya? Don't be swayed by your Vishaya vāsanās. Cling to I am. It's as simple as that. And I'll just quickly answer the next question because it's very closely related. When we are doing some karma, how do we know whether we are undergoing destiny, prarabdha, or is it a new karma that we are creating? As I say, the two go on hand in hand. We cannot distinguish one from another. So long as we are doing some karma, that is, the doership is there. And so we also, Bhagavan says in verse 38 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, if we are the doer of actions, we will experience the resulting fruit. So the resulting fruit is the prarabdha. Is what we experience, whatever we experience in this life, that is the fruit of actions we've done in the past. So, so long as we rise as I am the doer, who is the doer? Ego. Because so long as we rise as ego, we experience the body, speech, and mind as ourselves, and so whatever actions they do, we experience as our actions. So, and so long as we're allowing our attention away from ourselves, we are acting under the sway of our Vishaya vāsanās. What we do under the sway of our Vishaya vāsanās, that is creating, that is the agamya. The actions done under the sway of Vishaya vāsanās are agamya. Agamya are the karma that bear fruit. Those fruit get stored in Sanchita, from where Bhagavan may sooner or later select them for us to experience as prarabdha. So we need not, if we understand this karma theory correctly, we need not be concerned about it at all. All we need to be concerned about, what is the cause for action? It is vāsanās. As Bhagavan says in verse 2 of Upadēśa Undiyār, the fruit of action pass away. That is, when we experience the fruit of any action, that fruit is then finished. We can't consume the same fruit more than once. If I give you a mango, you can only eat it once. You can't eat it again. So likewise with the fruit of action, when you experience the fruit of any action, that fruit is perished. It is finished. But there's a huge vast pile of unexperienced fruit waiting for us to experience, so long as we remain in samsara, so long as we allow our attention to go away from ourselves. So prarabdha, it's the fruit of our past actions. We have no control over it. It is what is ordained by Bhagavan, it will happen. But the only thing we have control over is the agamya. And the only way we can control, that is, avoid doing agamya, is by avoiding allowing ourselves to be swayed by our Vishaya vasanas. If we, to the extent to which we allow ourselves to be swayed by our Vishaya vasanas, in other words, to the extent to which we allow our attention away from ourselves, we are inevitably doing agamya to a greater or lesser extent. The more we're swayed by our vasanas, the more we're doing agamya. The less we allow ourselves to be swayed by our vasanas, Vishaya vasanas, the less we will be doing agamya. But some people have a wrong idea, but we need to exhaust all the past fruit before we can attain liberation. That is not how it works. As Bhagavan says in that same verse 38, if we have a doer of actions, verse 38 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, he said, if we have a doer of actions, we will have to experience the resulting fruit. Vinay mudal namayin, vinay payam tvipom. If we have a doer of actions, we will experience the resulting fruit. When one knows oneself by investigating who is the doer of action, doership will depart and all the three karmas will slip off. This is the state of liberation, which is eternal. So we don't have to exhaust all our fruit. What is the root of all karma? It is the doer. Without the doer, doership and experiencership go hand in hand. So long as we have a doer, we will experience the fruit. So who is the doer? The doer is ego. So if we investigate this ego and thereby know what we actually are, the doership will be destroyed, that ego will be destroyed, and along with ego, its doership and this experiencership will also be destroyed. So all without anyone to do the karmas or to experience them, all the three karmas will come to an end. And this is the state of liberation, which is eternal. It's what we always actually are. So this is all we need to understand about the law of karma. What we do under the sway of our oh yes, I was talking about verse 2 of Upadēśa Undiyār. There Bhagavan says, the fruit of action will pass away, will perish. That when we experience the fruit, it's finished. But what causes us to fall in the ocean of action is the seeds of the vāsanās. So long as we allow ourselves to be swayed by our vāsanās, we will continue doing karma. If we want to free ourselves from karma, we need to avoid being swayed by Vishaya vasanas. In order to avoid being swayed by Vishaya vasanas, we need to cling to I am. If we cling to I am, and if we cling to I am firmly enough and keenly enough, we will thereby know what we actually are. Ego will be annihilated and all the three karmas will come to an end. This is all we need to understand about the karma theory. It is actually so simple, but we unnecessarily complicate it if we try to say, but which actions are prarabdha, which actions are agamya. We cannot know and we need not know. If an action is done under the sway of our vasanas, it is agamya. It may also be in accordance with prarabdha. That's Bhagavan took out. Bhagavan will take care of the actions that we need to do according to prarabdha. We need not be concerned about that. If we are swayed by our Vishaya vasanas, we are doing agamya. If we want to avoid doing agamya, don't allow yourself to be swayed by Vishaya vasanas. In order to avoid being swayed by Vishaya vasanas, we just have to cling to I am. So there are more questions, but it's probably we're probably running out of time now.
Michael, yes, I think we will take up the remainder questions in the next session.
But anyway, today we've covered the most important questions, the ones about the practice of self-investigation, about surrender, and about karma, which is also very closely related to both self-investigation and self-surrender.
Absolutely. Thank you once again, Michael. Having you with us every month is a blessing, and
it's all Bhagavan's doing, not my doing.
Thank you.
Everything is done by him only.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is him only.